minds across the world crash out with the mounting fury of World War II, the United Nations have been preparing quietly for an even more profound test of their strength. The rebuilding of the war-shattered countries, the planning of peace. November 1943. To Washington come delegates from every corner of the globe to sign an agreement establishing the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, UNRRA, more briefly, UNRRA. Like the United Nations Conference on Food and Agriculture, held earlier in the year at Hot Springs, Virginia, UNRRA is only one of the outward expressions of the determination of the peoples of the United Nations to plan their post-war lives cooperatively and internationally. President Roosevelt, after signing the UNRRA agreement for the United States, addresses the delegates.
Here in the White House, seated about a table in the historic East Room, are representatives of 44 nations, United Nations, and those associated with them. The people of these 44 nations include approximately 80% of the human race, now united by a common devotion to the cause of civilization and by a common determination to build for the future a world of decency and security, and above all, peace.
Back of the President's words, back of the whole formation of UNRRA, lies the picture of a Europe devastated by more than 4 years of war. In Poland, death, desolation, and disease have become the common experience of a whole nation. From the shelled and bombed cities of Italy, Germany, and France, refugees have fled toward some pitiful mirage of safety. Close to 30 million Europeans have been driven from their homes or shipped like livestock from one country to another to serve as slave labor or to satisfy the hateful racial ideas of the enemy. Destruction has sapped the life of a continent. Millions of homes of the common man lie in irreparable ruin. Railways, lifelines of supply for everyday life, and public utilities, electric power and water supply have been smashed. Harbor and dock facilities have been wrecked by retreating armies and are temporarily useless. Spiritual institutions have not escaped. Their work, essential in the life of the community, cut off. The burning of the books started in 1933. It is still going on. But within the shells of cities left by the receding tide of battle, life still goes on in its eternal patterns of death and birth. As the war slashes into its 5th year and the United Nations armies advance toward the heart of Europe, the lives of thousands of Europeans have become the responsibility of the Allied governments. In this hysterical and explosive atmosphere of relief and welcome, our armies set up AMG, Allied Military Government, to maintain order among the civilian populations and to provide them with the basic needs of life. AMG's greatest task is to supply food and medical services to thousands of men, women, and children who for years have been suffering from malnutrition and ravaged by disease. Wherever possible, AMG cooperates with stable and respected elements of the population for the setting up of the forces of law and order. But the great extent to which fascist corruption and ideas have permeated civil practice make unacceptable in many cases the use of the existing machinery of local government. To these difficulties is added the complex situation which AMG, as a branch of the fighting armies and geared to the military machine, finds beyond its scope. That situation is the great mass of human beings living in the no man's land between war and peace and seething with unsatisfied social and physical demands. It is such human demands that UNRRA will have to meet as it takes over civil government from AMG. On November 10th, 1943, the representatives met at Atlantic City to determine UNRRA's main lines of policy and to choose an international council of administration with the Honorable Herbert Lehman of New York as Director General.
We will be confronted with a spectacle of nation after nation, dangerously undernourished, menaced with disease, in dire need of food, of medicines, clothing, and shelter. We will be confronted with the tragedy of millions upon millions of people, both in Europe and in Asia, uprooted from their homes and separated from their families. In approaching the task which lies ahead, one cardinal principle, it seems to me, above all else, should motivate our actions and govern our policies. That is the principle of helping people to help themselves. We have been called upon twice within the span of a lifetime to devise a peace in which all men can live in freedom from fear and from want. We failed once. We dare not fail again.
We dare not fail again. In the tragic days of 1918, the Allied Relief Administration faced the task of rehabilitation after World War I. This body, in which the small and defeated nations had no working part, provided relief for Europe's starving millions on the principle of well-intentioned philanthropy, a philanthropy that failed to recognize the dangers implicit in bread without jobs, in relief without reconstruction. Embittered Europeans remember Allied charity as a symbol of their defeat and humiliation as individuals. Today, the people of the New World are committed to the job of fighting a global war to the finish. Every man, woman, and child has found that in some way, no matter how small, he or she can contribute something of importance to the country's war effort. continent-wide conservation and salvage drives have brought out the basic toughness and frugality of millions whom the Nazis once termed the soft citizens of the decadent democracies. Rich and poor alike have seen the necessity and good sense of food rationing. Wasteland and flower beds have been turned into wartime gardens to swell the nation's food supply, releasing more food for fighting armies and allies. The rich natural resources of power, minerals, and timber have been poured into war production. The manpower of the New World has made possible the rapid conversion of heavy industry from peacetime to wartime activity on a gigantic scale. In a war that has made supreme demands on both home and battlefront, the New World has proved it can mobilize its total strength. From the factories, from the farms of this great land, surges an ever-increasing river of foodstuffs and armaments, flowing to the seaboards, east and west. The New World is giving of its richness and strength to its partners and world neighbors. From the great warehouses built to collect the supplies stemming from every corner of Canada and the United States, the convoys edge out across dangerous seas to Liverpool, Sydney, Algiers, Murmansk, bringing material strength to our allies fighting a destructive war on their own soil. Through such mutual aid, the Russian people have been able to start rebuilding their towns while the war is still on. Soon, all across Europe, there will be scenes like these in Stalingrad as cities and farms rise anew from rubble and ashes. To make this reconstruction possible, the New World will be called upon to provide basic supplies for Europe during at least 2 years after the cessation of hostilities. This will be done through UNRRA. In the first 6 months alone, Europe will need 5 million tons of wheat to be provided mostly from the farms of Canada. Eggs and egg powder from the United States and Canada will supplement the huge requirement of 800,000 tons of meat. Europe is in rags. Clothing will have to be provided to protect health and life itself. Medical supplies and equipment will be of first importance at a time when epidemics and bodily breakdowns will be on the increase. Most of these relief measures will be useless unless European agriculture is restored on a sound working basis. The New World must be ready to supply agricultural machinery in great quantity. Fertilizers to enrich impoverished and scorched soils. Seed for planting, since vital seed reserves have been used for food. And to further enable Europe to produce 4/5 of its own food supply, livestock will be required to replenish its depleted herds. Today, we of the New World are looking up from the job in hand. Today, we are discussing and making plans for our post-war future, looking up hopefully from the soberly ordered life which the war has demanded to a life comfortable and prosperous by comparison. But we realize that the quality of our future lies not alone in fine cities, in beautiful homes and gardens which we see as our human right. Nor in plastics and light alloys, the streamlined dream of the shining helicopter. And above all, our future does not lie alone in the victory of our armed forces. Lies in our answer to the destruction and poverty in Europe, which threaten the whole world with hardship and unrest. In UNRRA, we have taken a first step toward bringing to these people of Europe a freedom from fear and want upon which our own freedoms depend. Prosperity, like peace, is indivisible. Their future is ours.